All right. Hello and welcome Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about or just a live TV. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. I'm an identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, creator, and founder of the Just a Live TV, as well as the Women Supporting Women Can Network. Today, we're going to be talking about, are you an introvert? This is quite an interesting topic and something that I feel very, interested in bringing to you. So absolutely, we're going to do that episode today. Our sponsor today is none other than the Phoenix Identity and offering you the Empowered Warrior Women Challenge. It is 5 days on the 5 ways you are giving away your power and how you can start to take that back now. So go and check those links in the description. You can connect with myself and our guest speaker today, Kelly, straight through the links in our description of this episode. Like, follow, and share the show. Join our newsletter at justalivetv.com. And let's get started. Kelly, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Melissa. So my name is Kelly VanHoveln. I'm here today to talk about introverts being entrepreneurs and social media and growing a business and all of the things. I got my start in the online space probably 13 years ago now as a social media manager and web designer. And over the years, I've transitioned from just social media management into more social media coaching. And really my heart is for helping introverts to learn how to use social media and grow their business and market and sell online in a way that feels really good for them, that allows them to operate out of true integrity and that doesn't just feel slimy and gross. So that's where I'm at today. And Melissa, I think I lost you.
No, we should be good.
Okay, sorry, you locked up for a second there.
Being an introvert is interesting. I think that there's introverts, and then I think there's other things that create the feeling of being an introvert without actually being an introvert. So one of the things that I was thinking about before we got on here was, being an introvert can create stress and anxiety, but it flips the other way as well. Being stressed and anxious and having fear, and I'm a spiritual teacher, and I find that a lot of fear and anxiety, a lot of introverted behavior stems from not knowing your gifts, not embracing your gifts, not being confident in your gifts or what other people will think. So a lot of the time, a lot of spiritual individuals or spiritually gifted individuals will actually hold themselves back from embracing their purpose and embracing their abilities and voicing that and expressing it because of that fear and anxiety, and that will cause introverted tendencies. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a really great observation. And I think that is definitely something to draw attention to. Introversion is often seen as having social anxiety, a lack of confidence, not being afraid to put yourself out there. And while introversion and those traits can go hand in hand, that's not what the definition of an introvert is. So I think the first thing is, let's get clear on exactly what that means. So there is still, from what I am understanding, and I'm not a psychologist or a brain scientist, but I do think there is still some dispute in the medical and mental health community over what truly constitutes an introvert. But I think the most common trait that many of us identify with right now is that we feel drained after socializing, and we really prefer our downtime, our alone time, our quiet time. It's not having social anxiety, though it can go hand in hand. It's not a lack of confidence, though those can go hand in hand. And it's not being afraid of people or being afraid to try new things or anything along those lines. And it's not something to overcome. It's not something that you have to change about yourself. It's actually something to embrace. One of the biggest mistakes I see among my clients and among people in some of these bigger introvert communities that I belong to is people who use introversion as an excuse to not do the scary thing or not move forward or not take action. And I see people all the time, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't do that. And that being, I can't do videos. I can't talk about myself on social media. I can't approach someone. I can't grow a business. I can't do sales. That's just not true. You absolutely can do all of those things. You just might need to do it in a way that looks different than someone who is more extroverted and who really truly enjoys what I call peopling, or what a lot of us call peopling, right? Being in front of people, being in front of an audience. Even the simple act of being online and reading someone's content and commenting on it or sending them a messenger message is socializing. It is a social behavior. And so we just need to give ourselves the proper recovery and rest time after doing those things. We have to acknowledge that those things won't fill our cup and energize us. Those things will drain us, and we need to care for ourselves afterwards. Does that kind of fit in with what you were asking?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We have a comment. I enjoy people. I struggle to keep it up for too long. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I have introverted tendencies, but I would, for the most part, I would say I'm an introvert. I started a talk show, but I'm still an introvert. I don't like being on camera. I don't like hearing my own voice. I don't like pictures. I will not go and rewatch an episode unless I absolutely have to. But I still started a talk show, and that was allowing myself I found a way that worked for me, that made me feel comfortable, that made me put myself out there, that enabled me to do all of the things that I knew that I wanted to do and that I desired to do in a way that worked for me. And I think that introverted people, or even people who have introverted tendencies, need to find what works for them, need to find how that, right? We're not all going to act the same, because regardless of whether we're an introvert, a mother, a brother, a friend, a CEO, or an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter what our titles are. We're all individual people, and we all have individual needs and thoughts and beliefs and self-expression, right? So for me to come on and do a talk show, other introverts might not be able to do that. Right. And it might cause them too much panic and too much anxiety, thinking, oh my goodness, I can't do this. This is too much for me. Right. And that's okay. It's absolutely okay. You don't have to take it to that degree. I find some people who identify as an introvert are actually empaths or mediums. Empaths and mediums. And again, because I do believe that introversion can really impact the spiritual community, and the spiritual community really impacts introversion tendencies, is that when you're a psychic or a medium, or more specifically an empath or a medium, an empath is somebody who physically takes on the emotions of another. That is an empath, right? So it doesn't even have to be your emotions. All of a sudden you can be raging angry and have no idea why, right? When an empath goes out or is in contact with other people, it is draining, because you're constantly taking on those energies. You're constantly taking on other people's emotions, and high vibrational emotions, whether they're negative or positive, are very draining. So I can see that happening as well. Now, for mediums, if you go out in public, or you even go anywhere in your house or out in your backyard, spirits are everywhere, and they're not to be feared. But somebody who doesn't know they're a medium, or doesn't know how to protect their energy or put boundaries in place and all of the things that introverts should do normally, then they're going to feel all of those energies. They're going to be bombarded by spirits. They're going to be bombarded by visions and everything that comes with being a medium. And again, that will cause the fear and confusion of leaving your house, and that draining energy, because you're constantly connecting to a different plane. And it's hard on your system.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, I don't have any experience necessarily with the spiritual realm. I believe that it exists, but that's kind of the extent of it at this point in time. So really a lot of my knowledge is more in the stuff that can be studied, and the things that we personally can control. But what you're saying about taking in this energy and being aware of the other energies around you, that is 100% an introverted trait. And part of it is that we are more empathetic. We are more aware of what's going on with those around us, both the spoken and the unspoken social cues. But we are also usually, and again, blanket statement, we are also usually very aware of our own internal state, and we're monitoring our own internal state to prevent overwhelm. And so that's where some of the risk aversion, the lack of spontaneity, the needing to analyze everything or I don't want to say overthink, because it's not a negative, but the need to think things through very clearly and have a plan is really, really one of our strengths, because it keeps us from getting overwhelmed. It keeps us from doing things that are overly risky. But often in the entrepreneurial world, those things are seen as a negative, because we are not typically the type of person who's going to act on a whim to chase the latest trend. We're not going to be the person who's going to have this amazing business idea, go hard on it for the next 3 weeks, and see immediate success. On the flip side, we're also not that person who's going to chase after the latest trend or chase that business idea for 3 weeks and give up on it when it doesn't work. We are very much wired for the long game, sustainability, slow and steady wins the race type of thinking. And I'm not sure how some of these things tie in with more of that spiritual realm. So I'd be interested to see your kind of take on that.
Absolutely. So because I'm like I said, everybody's kind of different in the way that their introvertedness kind of expresses itself, or the manifestation of it, right? I tend to jump into things, but I'm very analytical. So I love that you said that. I am extremely analytical. I will think, if you give me a situation, I will think of 50 different possible scenarios and then run through them and be like, okay, this is the one that's the easiest, or this is the one that's the best. And I do that not just for myself, but I do that for everybody else as well. That's probably one of the reasons I'm an expert in mindset, is because it's like, okay, this happened, so you probably feel this way, and this is what's causing that feeling. So it's like this whole thing. But again, when it comes to jumping in, because I'm so good and easy, because you did say being analytical is a strength. It absolutely is, right? It doesn't take me all day to go through 50 different solutions or 50 different styles, as long as I'm not emotional about it. When I get emotional about something, then that's when it's stunted. Then it takes me all day. If I'm emotionally raging at my husband, it takes me all day to process that, because I'm emotionally invested in it, right? Where I can take the emotion out of it and go, okay, how's this going to work? What's it going to look like? Right? And so the emotional aspect of it is another thing to consider being an introvert, right? Is, when you get emotionally invested in an outcome or a situation, it stunts your thought processes. It stunts your ability to connect with yourself, to, connect with the outside world and go, okay, logically, how is this going to work? How does it make me feel? What do I want to do? And then you just don't do it, because that when you get emotional, it's overwhelming just right then and there. So yeah, I do agree with that.
100%. And I have found that in the entrepreneur community, especially, there's really a tendency to try to stuff those negative emotions, to ignore them. A lot of the mantras and the mindsets, at least in my experience, have been at the expense of truly feeling the negative emotions. Like, we as entrepreneurs or CEOs, or whatever word you want to use, we're supposed to almost be like robotic. We're supposed to have our strategy and plow through it, process through it, keep going, no matter what else comes up. And I think we get shamed almost for processing emotion. And this may not be an introvert specific trait, but what I've found for me and for a lot of my clients as well, is that we do so much better when we acknowledge those emotions and process them. And I have noticed that for introverts, a lot of our downtime is used to process things, whether it's synthesizing ideas, whether it is making a plan and analyzing and getting the strategy in place so we can move forward, or whether it's processing emotions. And we all do it different ways. For me, nature is my place to sit and process. And I usually have to be moving my body. So I shouldn't have said sit. I should have said to go and process, because it's walking the dog or going for a run or even doing a workout that really gets me to process through the frustration and the anger and sometimes the imposter syndrome, or even grief over not hitting a goal or missing, not signing a client. Like, there are still days where a sales call doesn't go the way I anticipated, and I'm angry, mad, upset, sad afterwards. I make sure that I give myself plenty of time in my schedule to process through those things. Whereas an extrovert might be able to go from one call to the next, to the next, to the next, because they're getting more energized and more fuel from the subsequent calls that happen after that first one that goes bad. I need that time to recompose myself and to process. And so for me, it's, like I said, it's movement or it's journaling. And there's a lot of journaling all of the negative stuff out, but then going back and looking at it and reframing it in a positive. Again, I don't think that is specific to introverts, but I do think because we don't process as well verbally, and because we don't get energized by interacting with other people, we have to find ways for ourselves to process through those emotions so that we can continue to move forward.
Yeah. So that is not just for introverts. That is actually a healthy mindset. We have the positivity movement. We have spirituality. We have so many variations of things. Law of attraction, positivity movement, cancel culture, all of these, hyped up terms and hyped up systems that are actually bypassing. And that's what we're doing. We're gaslighting ourselves and we're bypassing our emotions. When you bypass your emotions or you push them to the side or ignore them, you're not actually getting rid of them. What you're doing is you're stuffing them into a hole, and that hole is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. It's like a volcano, right? When you don't process your emotions, it becomes a volcano, and then it erupts and bleeds into everything else, right? Before a volcano erupts, you get a little bit of lava out of the volcano, right? You get a little bit of seepage in there. And when you have that, that's what happens. So when we're not happy or we're not in a good place mentally, that will seep into everything else. It'll seep into our relationships, our business, our spirituality, our sense of self and our sense of identity, our family, our friends, and our career, right? So bypassing those emotions is actually one of the worst things you can do as a human being, because it doesn't help you. It actually makes everything 10 times worse. So processing the emotions, not just for introverts, but for everybody, is actually, that's the healthy way to go. You're supposed to process them. You're supposed to feel them. Our emotions, whether positive or negative, have a lesson, right? Our positive emotions say, hey, that's the right thing. Our negative emotions are like, you know what? We need to learn this lesson in how to be stronger, in how to put ourselves first, in how to be a good partner, or whatever the lesson may be. That negativity is one, teaching you a lesson. Two, it comes out through emotion. And three, if you learn that lesson, you become smarter, you become braver, you be more confident and courageous and more able to express yourself in a way that's best for you. When you ignore those emotions, you're trying to be like every other positive Nancy out there. And honestly, it doesn't work. And you just become a fake version of yourself.
Yeah, if you're even able to push through that in the first place. I know definitely when I was first starting my business and I was working with a coach who was very extroverted and really pushing on me these ways of selling that just did not feel good to me. They were so out of alignment with the things I wanted to do and the way I saw myself as a person of integrity and the way I interacted with the world. And she wanted me to do all of these crazy things. And instead of, at that point in time, allowing myself to try these things and fail and learn the lesson from them, I just kept pushing myself and pushing myself and pushing myself to keep trying them over and over and over, ignoring how gross I felt, ignoring like even the physical issues that I was having, like the physical sensations. I would sometimes do some of these things, like she wanted me cold calling for a long time, and I shouldn't say for a long time. I tried it for a month. I took a 1-week assignment to cold call this number of businesses when I was working on my Facebook ads business. And I stretched it out over a month because I could get through 3 or 4 calls before I would be sick to my stomach, shaking, just feeling so miserable. I literally could not pick up the phone and dial again. And it would take me hours to recover. Had I known some of the things that I've learned since then about myself personally, about introverts in general, about toxic positivity, right? All of these different things, I think I would have been able to look at that situation more objectively and say, this doesn't work for me, and there's a better way. I grieve for that person that took so long to learn all of these lessons, but I also know I had to go through them in order to get to where I am today. So I do see that there's utility in them. And I know you mentioned earlier that you're an introvert, but yet you have a talk show and you do all of these things because you figure out how to do them in your own way. So that doesn't mean that does not mean there aren't introverts out there who can't do cold calling. There may be some who that actually is enjoyable for them. They like being on the phone. They like the challenge of closing a call, getting a hold of the person, getting through the gatekeeper, doing all of those things. That didn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that no one else can do that who also has introverted personalities.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you mentioned that. I did telemarketing. That was one of my first jobs, and I quit halfway through the day because I couldn't do it. There was no way. I was crying. I left. They were listening in on my phone call. It was the most horrible training experience I've ever had. When it comes to business mentoring. So, and then I was also a insurance and mutual funds. I was a financial advisor who also sold mutual funds and insurance. And during that time, it was a lot of cold calling and a lot of, getting to know people. But I tried to do it my way. I, of course, lived in a very rural community that was anti-new. So they weren't too pleased with that. But at the same time, I have been in business for 6 years. And I now have 6 businesses. And the last business that I created was a business mentoring company, and it's called My Biz Fits Me. And the reason I created it is because I've been through business coaches. I've been through business mentors. I've had people tell me, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And none of that felt good to me. I don't like the DMing. I don't like the cold calling. I don't like useless posts. I don't like, fake inspiration posts. And they're not fake because they're somebody's story. But I shared a post not that long ago, and it says, we've been taught to tell our stories to sell. And I created the show because I wanted to share our stories to inspire. And that was the difference for me, is finding things that worked for me that actually felt good. And so that's why I created my business, My Biz Fits Me, because it is individual, right? You can have a similar business to somebody else, but you're doing it differently. You're showing up authentically for you and not how everybody else says that you have to.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of the things that you've said, you don't like the DMs, you don't like content just for the sake of content. That to me is an introvert trait as well. Typically, we don't like small talk. We want deep, meaningful conversations, deep, meaningful relationships. And you probably put this into place with your mutual funds and financial advising conversations as well, where you actually didn't just get on the call and sell somebody. You took the time to find out about them, talk to them about their interests, their lives, their business. And then only when you had that relationship moved forward. Now I'm putting words into your mouth, so that may not be exactly how it was, but typically that is what I recommend. Whether you absolutely can contact someone in a message over Facebook Messenger or Instagram Messenger or LinkedIn messages, whatever, and build a real relationship with that person that eventually becomes a business relationship. And again, this is, I think, where we really shine as introverts, is that we're willing to play the long game. I shouldn't say it that way. We prefer to play the long game. We're not chasing the instant high or the instant gratification. We're in it for the long game. And building relationships for us is just second nature. It's just something that we are so good at and passionate about. And if we can harness that, that is when our businesses really take off, because we're not selling just to sell. We're selling because we truly believe that we can help someone. And we may not be selling to that person we built the original relationship with, but they recommended someone to us, or they connected us with someone else. So it's all about, again, building relationships, networking, and playing the long game, which again makes it sound bad to some people, I guess, but
you know what? It isn't though. All of my most amazing clients have been long game. It's conversation. It's how are you doing? It's, have you tried this? Have you tried that? How are you feeling about this? And long game. And then it's interesting because as you're building the long game and as you're building that relationship, if they decide to work with you, and that's a big if, because we never force anybody to work with us. It's always your decision. But as you're building that relationship, and if they do decide to work with you, then they're already ready for the transformation. My clients don't work with me past 6 months normally. I do have a 12-month program, but normally it's 6 months, because by month 3 or 4, they're almost done. They're almost good. Like the transformation by that point has happened, right? And it's by building that relationship, by building that, that readiness and that involvement. I find that for my clients, you have to be ready. If you're not ready, or I don't want to say desperate, but it is. If you're desperate to not feel the way you're feeling anymore, and you've done all of these different things to get there, that's where I want you, because then you're ready, right? Then you're not second guessing everything. You're not questioning yourself. You are so good to go that it just happens. Sorry for the darkness. It's decided that it is absolutely clouding over now and raining outside my bedroom. So we might get a thunderstorm here.
Sounds good.
Love thunderstorms.
Yeah, me too. Well, I think that's really interesting. What you said about you want them to have tried other things before they come to you. I think and this is changing, I think that though there's this idea that you need to be the only influence in your clients' lives. They need to get all of whatever information to have the transformation from you. And you need to sell them on the transformation before they even know that they need it. And that's definitely something that I don't feel in alignment with, that feels really gross and sleazy to me. I think it's so much better, like you said, when they have tried some on their own and they're truly ready for that transformation. So they're doing the work, they're participating in the transformation. You are the person guiding them. You aren't dragging them along to the finish line. And it can be hard to find those people sometimes, but this is where the relationship building is so important. This is where really solid content that gives them a very clear idea of what you do and who the right person is to work with you, and being even clear with yourself about where the right person to work with you is on your journey. And I have a really awesome content writing program that I love taking clients through that gets at the heart of this. We take a look at all of your past clients, both the successes and the not so great ones, and we really dial in on who's the right person, what are the commonalities, what do they have to have already tried, where are they on the journey, so that you can speak really clearly in your content to that person. And I don't like saying this out loud, but I think there's just so much of the business growth and social media and content writing industry is focused on this really high level, basic beginner stuff. But so many of us are ready to go deeper and be more vulnerable and more open in our content and more thorough in our content. And that's not being taught or shown in a lot of places.
Yeah. So with introvertedness, right? We have a tendency as introverts not to put ourselves out there, right? Because it's scary or it's fearful or anything else that you're feeling as an introvert. And when it comes to social media and when it comes to meeting new people in person, going to events, doing all of that. I know for me, I don't like being the center of attention. Now that I've started my show, I went to a concert. I went to a concert a few months ago. And I went to the concert. I was in the 7th row, and up on stage, there were two very well-known people. For the life of me, I can't remember their names right now, but they were on stage. And I was like, I want to be up there. And for me to say that is fantastic, because if even the thought of me standing up in front of a room, a small little room of, a dozen or less people, and I would be panting and I would be hyperventilating and sweating and crying and all of shaking because I would be terrified. But I go to this concert and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I want to be on stage. I want to be up there talking to everybody, and the show opened that up for me because I created something that let me be who I am, that I can express myself with no worries and no cares, and build those relationships and build the confidence in myself that now I'm ready to stand on a stage, which for me would have been absolutely terrifying 6 months ago.
Do you think that there is other mental work you've been doing in the background to prepare you for some of this stuff? Yeah.
Always. So I am, again, an identity coach. First and foremost, I'm an identity coach. And that is our mentality, right? Who we are at our core, what drives us, our purpose, our passions, and our abilities. And in doing that, it's constantly, because I'm analytical, because I'm slightly introverted and I take time to process, and the fact that I'm such an expert in mindset, it's easy for me to see what, not the issue or the problem, but where the stuckness feels, where the grossness feels, and how to work through that, right? I don't take my emotions and let them consume me. I consume them and I feel them and I acknowledge what they're trying to teach me. And I've learned that process, and I teach that process so that it is easier, right? It doesn't take me that long to work through one of those issues or one of those beliefs or processes that I need to go through to find out how to do that better or how to express myself better. So yes, we don't ever stop working on ourselves. Because of our experiences, we're always learning and growing. And those experiences don't change who we are, but they change how we feel confident in expressing who we are. And so it's, okay, this happened. Do I still believe in this? Do I not believe in this? Is this right for me? And then we change it. Right? So standing on the stage was terrifying. Now it's not.
Yeah. Interesting. I definitely noticed for myself as well that as I got more confident in my abilities, I also had more confidence to try new things. And that kind of, I think, can be where the introversion and confidence connection lies, is that the thought of doing something new, the thought of trying something new can be overwhelming, and we take that as lack of confidence, and so we don't try new things, and so then we lose our confidence in our own abilities. Versus, and I'm never an advocate for pushing yourself to the point of burnout, but I do advocate that all of us push our boundaries a little bit, push your edges, try new things, because that's the only way we grow. And that's, again, not introvert specific. But I think for many of us, it is scary to try new things, knowing that we could potentially be overwhelmed by that. We could, need a half a day of recovery time after trying something new and it not going the way that we wanted it to.
Yeah. For anybody watching, and even yourself, Kelly, do you ever feel, furthering on to what you say, do you ever feel like all of a sudden you get this immense power And it's not a spiritual thing, and it's an energetic thing, right? Where all of a sudden you feel really powerful and really confident. And even if you're not generally a confident person, if you've, feeling down or very self-conscious, every so often you'll get like this boost of power where you feel very confident, very powerful, very take charge and able to do everything. We as individuals have access to that 24/7. We have the ability to find that power with ourselves and recreate it whenever we need to. Now, all of the time is never a good option because that's draining as hell, but we have that ability to connect to that inner power. And what it is when we identify who we are, because we're all different individuals, right? You and I, we could be wives and mothers and, but we're not the same. Our needs aren't the same. Our desires aren't the same. Our beliefs aren't the same. We aren't the same people, even though we have the same roles and titles. Introverts, again, are still not the same people. So when you tap into who you are and you think, okay, well, who am I, right? What really drives me? What am I passionate about? What do I think my purpose is? What do I love? What do I hate? What am I good at? What am I not good at? When you finally identify who you are, that instantly creates a power center. And as you're creating that power center and as you're figuring out who you are, you start looking at all the different things. And when you know who you are, that power becomes exponential, right? That's the confidence. The confidence is created by knowing who you are, believing who you are, and standing and expressing in who you are. And when you do that, right, being an introvert, people will, ADHD, introvert, high anxiety, high stress, whatever that looks like, right? Being terrified of being on a stage, whatever that looks like for you, whatever weakness you think you have is actually a strength. And when you know who you are and you've embraced your identity, you take on that strength. So being an introvert is a strength. You just have to learn how it works for you. And when you learn how it works for you, you get the confidence, you get the clarity, and you get the courage to take those steps to move forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I know you had a question in there and I don't remember what the question was. I apologize.
That was the energy source, right? When you, and not even an energy source, but that feeling of being powerful, right? When you've succeeded at something or somebody tells you you're really good at something and you believe it, right? And I think that's what it is, use the example. If somebody's told you you're really good at something and you feel yourself puff up, and not in like a conceited way, but puff up as in, I really am. Right? A success of a client, your child looking up to you and seeing you for the first time as somebody who knows what they're talking about, whatever that is, that feeling of power, that's your identity. So yeah, it's understanding and knowing what that feeling is.
Yeah. So I think kind of going along with this, but maybe not exactly, what happened for me and what I think happens for many people who are neurodiverse or have some other thing where they don't feel like they quite fit in is I often felt like there was something wrong with me. I often felt like I needed to change something about myself. And I can remember being as young as 3 years old and wishing I was more like the birthday girl at the birthday party that I was at because she was so outgoing and gregarious and friendly and fun. And I just wasn't that. And what happened for me, and I think what happens for a lot of people, is we try so hard throughout the rest of our lives to change who we are that we lose confidence, not because we don't think we're good at things, but just because we feel like everybody else is this way and I am this way. And I can't trust myself to continue acting in my own way and still fit in, still be successful, still whatever it is that your goal is. That was definitely something I had to face personally on this entrepreneurship journey. And it's been a journey. It's been 3 years now making the change from social media manager to coach, where I've dealt with some of this stuff. But before that, it was even 2 years of going from I'm a stay-at-home mom who freelances doing social media management on the side to my kids are all in school and now I'm running a social media business. It's been a lot of years of transformation and growth and learning to trust myself and learning to trust my instincts and my gut. And yeah, just learning self-trust. And it started with just like the littlest, tiniest things, right? Like even just, I'm going to post every day this week just because I said I'm going to post every day this week, and then following through with that and going, oh, I did that action even though it was scary, right? It just started so small. And people ask me sometimes, you were already doing social media management, why did you struggle so much to get visible on social media as yourself as you were growing your business, and especially as you were growing your coaching part of your business? And the best way I can think to say it is, when I was doing social media for clients, I got to take on the persona of their brand. When I was growing my own business, I had to be me. And that was really scary. That was very hard to be myself and also this business person, CEO, coach, like all the things that I had never seen myself as before. I had to get really comfortable with all of those titles before I could embrace that publicly. And that was definitely a challenge. I don't know if that's something that you've experienced. I know you said you've done 6 businesses in 6 years, and I am just intrigued to know, have you had to go through some of these growing pains at each step along the way, or have they just kind of flowed naturally?
So 3 of the businesses that I own, because they're concurrently, I have 6 right now. 3 of them. So my healing jewelry. So I do a local one, and that's healing crystal jewelry, healing heat therapy bags, the ones you microwave and put on your shoulders or wherever. I also have my identity coaching and my spiritual teaching. I'm also a spiritual reader, so I do readings and mediumship and all that fun stuff. I'm also a past life regressionist. So I have, those 3 have been for the last 6 years. And yes, absolutely. I've gone through transitions with all of those 3 consistently over the years until this past year. Something changed within the last 12 months where everything became clear. And a lot of that had to do with when I started the show. So I started the show, I started the Women Supporting Women Can Network, and I started my business coaching practice or my business mentoring practice. Those all started this year. And absolutely, I went through those processes. I had to figure out who I am in each business, how that looks in each business, how I identify in each business. And I'm the same in all of them, right? I just different aspects of myself. We are very multifaceted and multi-passionate human beings, right? So you'll see business coaches who say, oh, you have to do it this way and you have to do it this way and focus on one thing. Because I do multiple things, having them all together is confusing, right? For most people, it's confusing. If I say, oh, I do all of these things out of one business, it's like, oh my goodness, like, right? And the misconception is that the misconception with having 6 businesses in one is that, oh, you couldn't focus on one thing because you weren't good enough, right? That's the general consensus, right? And it's not. I'm excellent at all of them, which is why they're separate, which is why they have separate logos, separate names, separate identities. They're just different facets of who I am, right? Being an introvert is a part of who you are. It is not that's not your identity. That's not, it's a one of the ways that you express yourself. And so I found a way to harness each of those parts of my self-expression. Right? So I understand it is easier to, teach other people how to do social media, right? It's easier for you to jump into somebody else's persona. Look at Beyonce, right? Beyonce had Sasha Fierce, Eminem, right? Marshall Mathers, Eminem, Slim Shady. He had 3. Then you have Ziggy Stardust was, oh my goodness, I can never remember. But then you have Ziggy Stardust, and they're all alter egos, right? And when I start with people in business, it's, what's your alter ego? Do you have an alter ego or a super ego that's who you picture as a success, right? That's the version of you that's successful. Do you have it as an alter ego? Do you have it just as a super you? What are you looking for, right? And introverts kind of do that. They pick up this alter ego or this super ego where it's like, okay, in order to do this, I'm going to embody somebody I'm not, without even realizing that they are embodying themselves, the truest version of themselves, right? That's what an introvert, when you actually find your success, it's because you've acknowledged and embraced the truest version of yourself. And that gives you the confidence, that gives you the trust. And you mentioned trust, and that is huge. Every time we have a perceived failure, it is a ding to our trust, not that our trust in other people, the trust in ourselves. Look at relationships. If you're an introvert and you've put yourself, even non-introverts, you've had relationships that have quote unquote failed, and I don't believe in failure, they're stepping stones. If you've had a failed relationship, you internalize that. And it's like, what did I do wrong? How did I not see the signs? How, what am I not worthy enough? And we internalize it. And it again becomes a ding to our self-trust, our self-love, our self-care. And then as we go forward, we always have that in the back of our head. I made the wrong decision. I did the wrong thing. I can't pick a proper partner or a proper business. And it's, even launches. If you're an entrepreneur and you do launches, when you hear crickets, and I've heard a lot of crickets over the years, when you hear crickets, it's a ding. Whether you are the strongest mental professional or not, it's still a ding, right? What didn't I do? What can I do better? But instead of saying, what did I do wrong? Or that I failed, it's how can I do this better? What can I tweak to make it more me? What can I tweak that I'm really representing my passion for this? And it's a whole nother story.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of my favorite examples of somebody who adopts an alter ego or another persona is Ryan Reynolds. And the fact that he's so open that he's a hardcore introvert, he prefers to stay home. But when he gets on talk shows or he gets out and does his movies, it's Ryan Reynolds, the actor. It's Ryan Reynolds, the comedian, right? It's this alternate persona that he adopts. And I think we understand that for celebrities, but the kind of resistance that I've gotten among people in real life in the entrepreneurship space is, well, I'm just being fake. And even the idea of fake it till you make it feels gross to a lot of people. And I'm not asking people to do that. And I don't think you're asking people to do that either. But I think we do need to recognize that you do have different components of your personality, and playing up one in the right time is not being fake. It's just letting that part shine a little brighter for that temporary period of time. I think it could also be a detriment as well. If you overdo it with your persona, you can wear yourself out or, start feeling like that's the only way people like you. There's definitely the potential for negatives with that as well. So I encourage people to use the alternate persona, but to do it with caution and do it intentionally, not because they are lacking.
Yep. You think of high school, work environments, all of the places where you need to put on a persona, right? And one of the reasons I started identity coaching in the first place was 6 years ago. Two of my favorite musicians had committed suicide. And it got me thinking about and really tapping into the persona, right? When you are in a high profile position, now, whether you're an introvert or not an introvert, and I think most of us can have introverted tendencies, when you're in a high profile position, it's assumed that you have a persona to uphold, you have a reputation to uphold, you have to be closed off and silent, and you have to act a certain way, right? And so that becomes your entire life. You look at people on social media who are, you know, well represented. They've got everything looks great and their house looks great and everything's going good. And then look at the amount, and not even that. Look at the amount of high profile suicides we've had in the last 10 years. Look at how many we've had. There is a reason for that. And majority of the time, and I have not spoken to these people, nor do I represent their families, but I do represent a mindset that knows what I'm talking about. I'm an expert in mindset. And what ends up happening is when you are in a high profile position as a CEO, as an actor, as a musician, as anything, you are exponentially judged by your persona. You are exponentially judged because your situation is better, and I high quotations that, and I'll put it in full caps because it's not true. You are better off than the rest of the population, which is completely wrong. If you say I'm unhappy as a high profile individual, people are going to come at you and go, you've got money, you've got success. Why are you unhappy? You're married, you've got kids, they situationally shame you because of this, because your situation is perceived to be better than theirs, right? As introverts, when you are trying to keep up a persona, it's draining to the point where you lose your sense of identity because you're trying to keep up appearances. You lose your stamina because, again, the amount of energy it takes to harness a different persona or a different perception of yourself is life draining. And I'm not just talking, you're tired at the end of the day. I'm talking it's draining everything. Your happiness, your ability to be happy, your ability to process, your brain power, your logic, your sense of self is gone. And the only way you see yourself out is, again, suicide, which is why this is such a great topic, because we do get to that point, right?
I think we can get to that point. I don't think it's necessary to get to that point. And I don't think it's necessary to embrace such a different persona from your own natural personality. We definitely can play up traits we want to or play down traits we don't want to, but I don't ever advise people to be so uncomfortable that they're unhappy. And maybe that's part of that toxic positivity that we talked about at the beginning as well, of like, well, you have this great personality, you have all of this success, you're not allowed to feel pain or sad or to experience failure. But I do think we need to get better at acknowledging as a society that failure is part of life. You've mentioned a couple of different ways, especially in business, that people fail. And going back to our way earlier conversation about processing emotions, I think this is where that's really important. And this might have been the point you were making all along, was that we can have the part of our personality that we are showing on social media that is the highlight reel. But your clients and your audience and your people who care about you also want to see the real stuff. And maybe we don't need to go fully in depth with every bad moment, but I think it's good and needed to acknowledge the negatives and the failures, even if we don't do it necessarily, again, in depth, super publicly. One thing I advise many of my clients to do is when they have a launch that doesn't go as well as planned, don't just stuff it, trash it, and start over. Go back, use your introvert power of analysis and look at what didn't work and look at what you could tweak and make better the next time. And the same even with every little, piece of content you put out. If it didn't hit the way you wanted it to, that's okay. Nothing's going to be perfect and nobody's going to suddenly, come after you with a mob because you said the wrong thing in a post. Or, I guess there is cancel culture today that maybe that's not true, but
there absolutely is. That mob mentality is crazy. So that adds to the stigma of being an introvert, right? Or the fear of being an introvert, right, is putting yourself out there and having that mob mentality come at you and attack you. And it doesn't need to be that way. It absolutely doesn't. I remember when I first started as a psychic intuitive reader. I would go on Facebook and I would do 4-hour lives giving away free readings to people on Facebook Live, right? And that's how I started. And it was terrifying, but I had people come on, tell me that I was a crackpot, that I was Satan's whore, and like a whole bunch of other stuff. And I remember these people, right? And I could have let it get to me, and I absolutely could have let it hit me differently. But I, again, have the mentality that that's their opinion. They don't have to listen. They don't have to watch. They don't have to engage. If they're triggered, that's their trigger. That's their issue. That's not mine. I can and will sit here and talk to people. And again, being an introvert doesn't mean that you have to put on this persona. I'm sure I could put on makeup and I could wear contacts and I could do my hair perfectly and, whiten my teeth and lose all the weight and whatever. But no, I show up as I am. I show up who I am, and I express that, right? Yes, I go get my nails done because I like it. I'm not doing it for anybody else. I'm doing it because I like it. Speaking of, I'm getting a new nail tech that, oh my goodness, that woman is gifted. So wait for that. But at the same time, I show up as me. I show up in tank tops. I show up in my bedroom doing this talk show because it's where I'm comfortable. It's where I feel good. And I don't, I'm not worried about everybody else's opinions. And I think being an introvert, like I said prior to this, when you know who you are, you're able to express that. I don't express every day when I'm unhappy. Have I expressed that I'm unhappy or that I'm going through a hard time? Absolutely. Most of you know that my husband, dislocated and broke his ankle a few weeks ago, and he's laid up now. I have to do everything, but it's a struggle. Life is meant to struggle. The purpose of life is to experience. That's why we're here, is to have experiences, to learn, to grow, to learn how to enjoy the moment, and just to be present and not worry about the past and not worried about the future, and just being here, doing your best, because that's all you can do, is just do your best. And if you don't feel like doing your best one day, don't. Right? As an introvert, you have to learn what works for you and how you express yourself and motivate yourself in a way that, again, works for you, because it's not going to be the same for all of us.
Yeah, 100%. And if I could have one takeaway for the entirety of this conversation for the people who are watching, it would be that you don't have to change yourself to be successful. You can figure out a way to make it work for you on your time frame, and don't use introversion as a crutch or a sticking point or something to keep you stuck. Embrace it, learn about it, figure out how to work with it, and achieve the success you were meant to achieve. And speaking of introversion,
in whatever way that looks
like. Frank with you right now that I'm coming very close to my limit of peopling for the day. So I would like to wrap this up in the next couple of minutes, just because I'm finding myself struggling to articulate my thoughts, and I'm going to just start rambling again.
Which is perfect, because I was just about to end it.
Fantastic.
That works perfectly. All right. Well, just a family, this has been our episode. If you'd like to reach out to Kelly or myself, you can find us. Links are in the description. Again, our sponsor today is a Phoenix Identity. If you want to join the Empowered Warrior Women Challenge, it is a 5-day challenge where we go through the 5 ways you're giving away your power and how you can start taking it back now. And for introverts, that's going to be exceptionally good, because you need to learn what your power is. Go like, follow, and share the show at Just Alive TV. You can find us on various social media platforms at Just Alive TV. If you would like to be a guest speaker, or if you would like to be a guest blogger, or even better, if you'd like to see a topic featured on the show, because that's what it's all about, giving you something to talk about, message us across any of our social media platforms. We would be happy to engage with you and find out what you want to talk about or what you want to see featured. And thanks for joining me, Kelly.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Melissa. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right, just family. I'm your host, Melissa Krechler. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, morning, or evening, depending on when and where you are catching this episode. I will see all of you on the next one.